Hey, what's up, people? Good morning. Good morning. Happy Sunday to you. Everybody's speculating, or a couple of people are speculating. What's that guitar? That's my old Sir. No, Sir. It's a Gil Yeren Bone, one of the first ones. And yeah, the pickups are different. I can't remember what he calls the pickups in that guitar, but it's right here. I'll just show it to you. Air gap or something he calls them. I can't remember, but they're unique, cool pickups. This is a second guitar that Gil made for me, and it's an interesting guitar because these ones have the mahogany he hollows out. So imagine that what's left is just a shell of the mahogany all the way around. It's like a hollow. And then he fills it with Paolona, I think which is kind of almost like balsa wood, like incredibly light wood wouldn't be strong enough to build a guitar out of on its own. But he inlays it in the mahogany, so it's not a hollow guitar, but it's really loud and has a lot of resonance, and it weighs maybe 4.5 pounds. This guitar, it feels hollow, so it's and really beautiful, obviously, the top and everything. The guitar, I would say, it actually maybe has my favorite neck of any guitar that Gil's made for me. It's absolutely incredible neck on it with like what you wish when you pick up a 59 Les Paul or something. This is what you would want the neck to feel like. It just, it feels like it's got really heavy strings on it to me. Actually, maybe I put 11s on it or something. I can't remember because I haven't played it for a little while. But the neck is just like with the way the shoulder's done, it's what you want a historic Les Paul to feel like when you pick it up, like where it's it's got heft, but it's like the shoulders are real tapered, and it just has this really organic, amazing feel to it because it's not the same all the way up. And it's just a really, really, really nice guitar that I would say sort of has almost Gretsch-like qualities because of the hollowness and stuff like that. So it's an interesting sound for sure. Put it down. And I didn't even get into the pickups. He designed the pickups to be something different, kind of a PAF meets something new with this air gap thing, and that's the thing with the pull pieces, and I don't really understand it, but it definitely has. I think they're called air gap. I think that's what he calls them. So, what's up? We've got Banana Hammock and Ben Van Geest and Odin Stan and all sorts of good folks in the chat. What happened this week? I made a video for a reverb pedal. Did you guys see the spring reverb? Really amazing sounding pedal. There's only a few spring reverbs in pedals that I can think of. One of them was a Dan Electro that was out years ago that was inexpensive, and it even had a thing called a kick pad on it. You could kick it and make it blow up. That pedal was out in the 90s. And then there's the Carl Martin spring reverb in a pedal, and the one I just did, the White Whale from Crazy Tube Circuits, is one of the only other ones that I've ever seen. So really great sounding. Very, I'll say it again. I've said it once, and I'll say it again. It's very organic. I don't even know what that means. Just has a really terrific sound. The tremolo and the verb. Mark is in the top chat. Thank you, Mark. He says, "Is there any benefit to buying a PT15 and a 100? I've seen both blue and silver 100 faceplates. Custom order is the PT15 hand wired like the 100. The PT15 is built just like the 100. There's PC boards in it, but the way they do the PC boards is, many would argue, probably the best way to construct an amplifier, which is they're incredibly thick, beefy PC boards that are really well laid out. And so it's not like you're not going to go in there and find turret boards or something like that inside a PT100 or a PT15. But they're really, really cool custom PC boards, essentially, the way they're built. The silver PT100 was the first version that came out in 2014. And there's one sitting right back there in the rack. The blue ones came out a year later in 2015. And they're exactly the same. Blue or silver, like electronically on the inside. Couple things changed with it's tonally, it was the way the PC boards were laid out. They made them easier to make, and that resulted in actually a price drop. It's the exact same amp, but it was just a little bit easier to construct. And so the circuit and everything, all the parts, all the values, everything stayed the same. So that's the only difference between the silver face and the blue face ones. And if anything John said, you might notice a little more clarity or something on the clean channel. But essentially, there's, I mean, as you can see, I've got a silver one back there, so they're the same. And then with the 15, is there a benefit to having a 15 and 100? I don't know. I mean, they are different. Like the amps, you know, with the 6v6s and the distortion channel, the preamps are essentially the same. The distortion sounds. The clean channel is quite different in the 15, so it's really sort of more derived from the Bella. So it's both American style cleans, but John's classic clean channel that, you know, went in the OD 100s and then went into my amp and got some mods and stuff, ended up somewhere between sort of a twin and a super reverb sort of circuit. It's very different in the PT15, more the Bella. There's no mid, there's just a treble and bass and the bright switch and then the volume and the gain. It's just a different sound. So, but I think both are great. Worth owning both. I mean, you know, the other thing is, it's, of course, the PT15 is smaller and super light, and it's just like, it's literally like, it's, I don't know if it's half the weight, but it's basically weighs like a Badger, you know, and it's the same head shell as a Badger. So it's so small and compact. I think for a lot of people, it's, you know, kind of a no-brainer. Gustavo says, he's up in the top chat. Thanks, Gustavo. He says, do you connect the aux with multiple amps? All go through the amp. I'm Pete Switcher. Return my aux for finding switching cables for different amps annoying. So yeah, so basically the way the amp Pete Switcher's laid out is, I've got on the first 3 cabinet selections, there's 3 different load boxes. This is a reactive load is 1, the aux is number 2, and then the fractal X load is on 3. 4 and 5, which I already have wired but not hooked up to anything yet, are going to be for my cabinets, so real cabinets. So all I need to do when I'm picking an amp or a cabinet, you need to select a cabinet or load first. So if I want to use the aux, I would just push 2. And then if I want amps 1 through 8, which are lined up in this rack and going over that way, I would just pick which amp I want going into the aux, or which amp I want going into a real cab or into the reactive load or X load. So the amp Pete would solve all your problems as far as, you know, making it really easy to hook stuff up in your studio and just pick what you want. It works flawlessly. I've been using it for a couple months now, and I love it. It's awesome. You know, I was doing tracks yesterday where I used the Vox for something, and then I went, well, okay, now I want to go to a fuzz through the SL68, and I just hit the switches, and, you know, then you dial up the aux and dial up some different cabs, and there it is. It takes just a couple minutes to set up a different guitar sound. It's really cool. Yeah, and somebody else is up in the top chat up there, and that's Enrico. Thank you, Enrico. And he says, big fan, just got a PT100 dialing to V30s in an orange 212 and Marshall, considering a different speaker. I know yours has creamback. How do you feel about the warehouse guitar speakers? I think you're asking. ET65. I don't really know that speaker. Is that like a 65 watt large dust cap sort of speaker? I'm never really a fan of those, as much as I try and like them, because I do have a cabinet with them on my Hedgehog cabinet. Sounds good, and it sounds good with that amp. You know, it's great. But when I hear them in Marshall cabinets, people always talk about, you know, they came out in the early 80s, those 65 watt selections with the big dust caps, and people talked about them with kind of, you know, like they dug them and they're like the sort of like a greenback with a big dust cap. I don't know. I just never really, I'm a greenback guy, so that's just me. The creamback does sound great in a 212 with the PT100 creamback 75s, because I find that it works for dirty and clean and everything. It's a great sort of full sounding, balanced sounding speaker. Greenbacks are still my preference for dirty tones, but then for clean tones, they're a little just sort of, they just kind of lay there a little bit sometimes for clean sounds. They don't have a lot of sparkle and kind of life to them. And that's where I like the H magnet in the creamback 75. The creamback 65, well, a good sounding speaker in its own right, it's kind of MIDI to me. It's got more mids than a greenback. So yeah, that's my feel on those. Couple other people up in the top chat. Mark's in there, and he says, which color of your signature, that's an interesting question, hides scratches and smudges best? Can you speak on your signature pickups versus the Les Paul reissue pickups? There's a lot of questions here in one post. Which color of your signature hides scratches and smudges? I would say gold, probably, or blue. I mean, either one. You know, probably black is the hardest, right? Black of anything is the hardest when it comes to scratches and stuff. Can I speak on my signature pickups versus Les Paul reissue pickups? I don't really have intimate knowledge or anything like that of like what Gibson's been doing the last, say, 6 or 7 years, because the last guitar I bought probably had burst buckers in it, I guess. So custom buckers and all the different ones that are out now, I can't really speak to those. I don't really know what they sound like. My pickups essentially are just a really, really balanced set of PAF style pickups. So that, you know, they're a low output PAF that does kind of what you want and excels at, you know, Jimmy Page, ZZ Top and stuff like that, with clarity and a really great middle position, and never do they ever sound woolly, but never do they ever sound shrill. So that's the way that I kind of describe them. Can the signature cover vintage Les Paul tones? I mean, my signature guitar I find is it's a chameleon, you know, so it with the pickup switching and the stuff like that, it can cover a lot of ground. And I'm never wanting for, but the thing about a vintage Les Paul tones, it's a 25.5 scale bolt-on neck guitar, so you're never going to get away from that. So it's always got its own thing going on. You know, Les Paul, the biggest thing that affects the sound is going to be the scale length. I find that is like above almost wood and everything else. When you've got a 24.5 scale guitar, or sorry, 24 3/4 scale guitar, or 25.5 scale guitar, that is a thing that really, really affects the sound of the guitar in a profound kind of way, where the 25.5 just has that Fendery snap that we've grown accustomed to, and the 24 3/4 guitar has a softer kind of springy thing to it. I don't know how else to describe it, but there's a different sound. So it's like that's why the Fender Jaguar is such an oddball, you know. And one more thing for Enrico. He was saying, any other suggestions of cabs? It sounds like you're kind of covered there. Orange 212 and Marshall 412. I mean, I would just try some different speakers in the cabs that you have, probably. All right. Moving through the other comments here. Old Guy's Guitar Vlog is always a faithful dude. He's always here. He hello to you, and he says hi to all you YouTube peeps. All right. Okay, moving down through the comments and questions. Did I do a part 2 of my new studio tour? It says Andrew Grant. No, not yet, and I have to get to that. Okay, I'll work on that this week. I have an interview with Pete from Man Pete about the switcher. That's going to be in there, and then I'll detail a bunch of the other stuff that I've got in here, just the gear and choices and stuff like that, and why I picked the stuff that I've got a lot to tackle, because I have to do on Wednesdays now. I'm doing my So You Want to Be a Pro Musician series. So, and they actually take kind of a little while. I thought it was going to be a little bit easier, but to make a coherent kind of 20-minute video where it's talking the whole time and it doesn't, there's not lulls and stuff like that. It requires a few takes and editing and stuff like that. So it actually takes me a minute. But I'll get on. I know I got to do the studio tour part 2, and it really shouldn't take that long. I'll keep it loose and kind of like just, you know. So I'll get on that. But I haven't done it yet. Arthur says he's hungover, and he's got his guitar and his coffee. That's the best way to get over it, my friend, and drink some water, and just nurse that hangover. Jeff says he has things to do, can't stay this week, but he's in the top chat. He's got a song burning in his head. He needs to record. I love it, Jeff. Go do it. Get out of here and go record the music. Justin is in the top chat as well. He says, what do you think of carbon fiber rods in the neck? I think it can be okay. I've heard different opinions about that, where people think that maybe it can kill tone or resonance or something like that. But and I don't see a lot of guitars with it in there. It's mainly like basses, 5-string basses, or that kinds of thing, that seem to have the carbon fiber kind of reinforcements and stuff in the neck. But, you know, as long as the guitar seems resonant and stuff, I think it's cool, you know. Maybe if it's a little dead sounding, maybe it's an issue, you know. I would just, you know, watch out for that. Hey, Tracy Guns is in the house. He says, have fun. He's a good man. And we follow each other on Twitter, and he's always got cool things to say and cool posts. Thanks for being here, Tracy. He might have left already. I think he jetted. So Peter Frampton announced this week he's doing his final tour, a farewell tour, which I know Peter, he's a friend of mine, and I hadn't, well, I guess that's the last time I saw him was at the Chris Cornell tribute concert. We got just hang out for a little bit there, and then I saw him, was NAMM before or after that? I think it was after that, because I also saw him there, so maybe that was the last time I saw him, just at NAMM for a little bit. But I guess he's got a degenerative muscular condition that he just sort of announced the other day. I didn't know about it, and he feels like it might start to affect his playing. And as he says, it's life changing, but not life threatening. But anyway, he's got this condition, and my heart goes out to him. And I definitely want to see him on this tour. I guess there's promising treatments, and he's participating in some new experimental stuff. But you know, I saw him play a couple of years ago, and he was just amazing. It was an acoustic gig in up in Ventura County, and he sang so great that night, and just played beautifully. And so go see him, you know, on this tour if you get the chance. If he's playing by you, definitely go see him. And he's just a great. He's funny and classy, and God, some of the stories he's got. You know, he's told me, we went out for lunch a little while ago, and he told me a story. It's probably about 6 months ago, and he told me the story about, because he grew up with Bowie, and you're just like, he's such a nice guy, and he's kind of, and then you forget that he's Peter Frampton, and then he goes, oh yeah, you know, with David, and then when we were 12 and we were in school together, and I'm like, what? Like, you know, and it's just he tells me this story, and it was just all about how David's eye, you know, he had one eye that was a different color than the other one, and it was because of a fight in school, and he knew the kids and stuff like that, and exactly what happened. And David had no ill will or anything like that harbored towards the kid that punched him, but there was a father that was I'm trying to remember the exact story, but somebody's father was a boxer, and it was teaching the kids how to box. So this kid that actually hit David knew how to throw a punch, and that's what happened. But and then he was talking about how, you know, he was having success with Humble Pie, and then eventually David, of course, just sort of blew up like a year or two after that, and they were all rooting for him, like, yeah, David got a hit. And finally around 1970, I guess, because, you know, Peter was doing well with Humble Pie in 68, 69. But anyway, he's a lovely guy. He's a great guy, and with great stories, and he's just plays fantastic. So go see him on this tour. That was all I wanted to say about that. Go catch him for sure, and I wish him all the best. And Chris Camp says the White Whale, that thing is cool, really cool. The White Whale, it was the reverb pedal that I just did a video for this week, and spring reverb in a pedal, and I loved running it into the Marshall too. I ran it into my 71 Marshall back there, and had the amp on about 5, so it was crunchy, and it just blew up the reverb in this really cool way. So if you haven't watched the video, check it out just for the baritone part that comes in sort of unexpectedly. And I thought it was a really cool tone. And actually, that's the one that the Dan Electro guys said, like, oh, they hit me up and said, it was the Crazy Tube Circuit fellow hit me up and said, man, you got some killer tones with that baritone. And it's maybe unconventional to run it into a rather dirty amp, but it has this really cool tone that sort of, I played a chord, and then I cut the chord off at the same time that the snare drum in the song's hitting, and it sort of blows up into the amp in this cool way. The reverb hits at the same time as the snare, and kind of has this ring, and it sort of has just sort of a neat effect, I thought. So Barbecue by Barber Electronics is a great spring reverb. That's from MHB Music. I didn't know that. I'm sure there's other ones out there I don't know about, so thanks for that. The only ones I know about are the Crazy Tube Circuits, a spring and a pedal, the Carl Martin, and the old Dan Electro one that you could had a thing called a kick pad on it that you could kick. Odin Stan says he couldn't make it last week. He was at the Slash and Miles Kennedy gig in Glasgow. How was that? My buddies Brent and Todd rocking out with Slash. They're always on the road, it seems like, traveling with him. So I hope it was a fun gig. Do I ever get nervous playing guitar for a session or live in a stadium? That's from Tylenol 88 or Tylenol BB. Can't read, one of the two. Do you find it overwhelming learning songs and nailing guitar parts for an artist? I don't find it overwhelming. It just requires the work, you know. Yes, I get nervous. I always do. I still do, you know. And I guess I hope it never goes away, because that's, if I didn't, I guess it would be sort of boring. But I've struggled with it over the years, you know. Like, to be honest, with nerves, and I have my sort of go-to things that I think about and stuff to get over it. When I want to get past that, I like to think about players like Jack White, who is so effective and primitive in his approach, and yet totally effective. I love his guitar playing, actually, and I like how he just doesn't care. And so one of the stories that I always relate when it comes to nerves is, I remember, sorry if anybody's heard this, I don't want to be boring and repetitive, but when the White Stripes played on the Conan show for a week every night, the last night, Friday night, they were the musical guest every night for a week. On the Friday night, they were playing a song where Jack White went over to the desk, Conan's desk, and he put his guitar down flat on Conan's desk for the guitar solo. So he ran over the guitar down and then started playing Slide right in Conan's face, and it was really cool. And you know, obviously you're on live TV and going for it and stuff. And then he went to put the guitar back on and run back over to the vocal mic to finish the last verse of the song, and somehow, like, I guess there was obviously a wireless system on the guitar and it pulled out or something, so there's no guitar now. And you know, what do you do? And he threw the guitar down on the ground and just finished the song, grabbed the vocal mic, and just with command did it with vocals and drums, and that was it. And I always say it was better, like it was a better ending to the song that it happened that way, because it was so explosive and kind of, you know, he didn't even flinch, he just did it. And I always try, and if I'm ever in a nervous moment or something like that, I'm watching that performance, or I think about whatever and just powering through. It's like nobody can hear especially if you're in a stadium, or if you're in, you know, and your guitar's in a mix. It's one thing I don't like about in-ears, because they make you scrutinize so much, because you can hear you got a good mix and it's right there in your head. You can hear every single thing you're doing. Just remember that in a big club all the way to a stadium, like, people in the mix, it just doesn't really come out that clearly. So just power through things and just think about, find your guitar player that you think about that is reckless and plays with abandon, and just go, what would that guy do in this moment? And just try and embody some of that. And that always gets me through when I have a moment where I'm in tune in my head. Tom says, he's up in the top chat. He says, wanted to thank you for your advice on picking and guitar, the music business in general. My picking's getting much better in only a couple weeks. That's great, man. Happy to be of service. Tim's up in the top chat as well. Thanks, man. He says, hey, Pete, who are some of your favorite drummers, whether you've played with them or not? Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks, man. My favorite drummers, one of my favorite drummers in LA is the guy that's in the Dirty Town video, song from my album. It's from Pete Thorn 2, and so Matt Log is his name, and Laug is how you spell his last name. Check him out on YouTube and stuff. He's just an amazing rock and roll drummer that has great feel. But I just mentioned my friend Brent Fitz. He's awesome. I've been playing with Matt Starr a little bit lately in LA, doing my Crab Guts band, my cover band, and he's awesome. Other drummers, Eric Aldanius is a good friend of mine, plays with Billy Idol. He's a lot of fun to play with. He played on my record. Kurt Biscara, good pal of mine, amazing drummer. I'm forgetting people. I have a good friend in Nashville named the Wook. That's an amazing drummer. Who else am I forgetting? Oh, come on. I gotta think. Charlie Paxson, great drummer, friend of mine. Andrew is up in the top chat, and he says, what are my thoughts on the Sur reactive load IR versus the UA aux? Is the aux worth the extra dough? So they're a little different. You know, of course the aux has other features. I like using them both. I don't know. I can't really I use them both about 50-50. The reactive load is so easy. You know, you plug it in and it just sounds, it's got an amazing reactive load in it that plots out exactly like it should. I know that. 16 IRs that you can load in there and just have them in the box. It's just a no-brainer. I mean, how many cabinet sounds does one person use, really, right? In the course of your career, it's like, well, I want my, the other thing is once you mic a cabinet and you get it just right, I tend to like it that way. Like, it's like I want to save that sound and then I want to repeat it, right? A great Greenback 412 with a Marshall or whatever, it's like that's that sound. And then a great V30 412, a great open back 212 with blues mic'd a certain way, save that sound. How many of those do you really need? I mean, to me, it's like 16 is a, it's quite a few to have like your 16 favorite cabinet sounds. So most of the posts you see with people that get one, they plug it in, they use it, they love it. And they're like, no brainer, simple, does what I want, just set and forget, that kind of thing, And so that's the beauty of the reactive load. The Aux is a deeper device that with all the cabinet sounds, as well as the multi-miking and the different things that you can do with room mics and things, which I love all that stuff, built-in effects, and it's about double the price. So you have to decide what kind of person you are, I guess, and what your end goal is. And it might be best to try them both and see which, like I really feel like with the Aux, you need the iPad to keep it right here all the time. And you need it to kind of make it, to really take advantage of it and get the most out of it. I bought an iPad with the Aux. So that was, of course, an extra $500 expense or whatever it was, maybe more. And I love it and I use it, and they both sound great. It's just one is deeper, more expensive, does more, has more features. The other one is simple, sounds amazing, and does what a lot of people. So I think those two camps, like figure out what camp you're in, how much you want to tweak. And, that's really the key. Chad is up in the top chat. Thanks, man. He says, thanks for sharing your time and knowledge. I appreciate that. Thank you. There's somebody else up in the Fowlosaurus is up in the top chat. Thank you, sir. He says, can you briefly disguise how you use a patch bay in your recording setup? Always interested in simplifying workflow. Thanks for helping me spend thousands of dollars. Sorry. Yeah, the patch bay is something I needed when I moved into this room. For those out here, I'll take a picture of it so you guys can see it. Because maybe there's some people that don't know the function of a patch bay or don't know exactly what they do. But okay, so patch bay looks like that thing with the jacks at the top, just below my power conditioner. And basically what a patch bay does is it allows you to connect all the gear of your studio inputs and outputs like really easily. So for example, right now, this is a 48 patch point TRS style patch bay, balanced patch bay. And many times you can do what's called normaling, where the top jacks are connected to the bottom jacks. Top row is connected to the bottom row, and it just flows through. So for example, the first 8 top row on the patch bay are my mic pre's. Okay, so I've got my BAE Neve style one, then 2 channels of API, then my UA610, et cetera, all the mic pre's, and they're hardwired connected to the bottom row of jacks, which goes out to my Universal Audio Apollo interface. So my mic pre's are hardwired going, into the patch bay and then normaled through to the Universal Audio interface. So if I just arm a track and then I've got a mic plugged in or something plugged in the mic pre, it's going to show up right into my Apollo. The outputs of my Helix and my Axe effects, they're on there so that I can plug a guitar into the Helix or Axe effects, and then I can just patch out of the patch bay into one of the inputs on the Apollo, and now I've got the Helix or the Axe effects right there. I've got other things like my bass preamp from Sansamp, and I've got my full tone tri-stereo chorus up there, so I could patch into that really easily. Couple compressors in here, an 1176 style DBX compressor. If I want to compress going into the Apollo, I can patch those things in on the patch bay just by plugging in the cables. So really, really easy to just kind of patch things in and get things going creatively really quickly. So that's the goal and the kind of the what you want out of a patch bay. So hope that helps. And I do really like it, having one. The other option is you're always plugging in cables from gear, and I for a while I did that for years. I did that just kind of hard. I mean, it's a pain in the ass. You're always behind your interface and plugging things in. and it's not expensive. I mean, the patch bay I got, the to get a true TT one is really expensive, like a pro studio style one, but a kind of project studio style one, which is what I've got, sounds fine, sounds exactly the same. It's just TRS connections instead of TT balanced. It's, I don't know, it was $100 or something, $99 I think for that patch bay. And the Hoppo is up in the top chat, and he says coffee. Thank you, sir. I agree. Coffee. I'm doing it as well. Who else is up there? Mark's up there, and he says, Mark's in the top chat. Thanks, guys. Everybody's doing the top chat. PT100 to a Friedman BE100 or 100 Deluxe. Similar voicing or more so different? Does the PT have similar pick attack and feel? And openness? I think so. I love Dave's amps, and he's a good friend of mine. And certainly when I had the second Marcia ever made, and when we were working on the PT100, especially the second version of it, I said, I want to get some of the qualities of what this amp has. I don't want you copying Dave's thing or anything like that, but I do like some of the things about this sound. And John said, "Okay, I can try and go for that," because we liked the sound of the amplifier. And John's got his own way about going about things. But little things like one thing that Dave does is he fine-tuned the amount of bass going through the front end of the preamp. And in a Marshall circuit, if there's a lot of bass going through the preamp, it's hard to get high gain and remain tight because you're pushing all this low end through, and it can kind of and blow up the front end of the amp and stuff and just kind of not be that tight. So trimming the bass to just the right thing. And other things like the filtering of the amplifier. Old Plexis had lower filtering. Without getting into that, it affects the feel and kind of the I don't know, it's just this vintage thing to those old Marshall amps. And Dave likes that vintage filtering, less filtering, which technically is maybe not as clean and not as, there's more sort of bullshit in the guitar amp signal when you don't filter some of the stuff out. But the lower filtering is one thing that I sort of, when we were doing PT100, I sort of pushed John towards in that direction a little bit. And he listened to it and he goes, "Yeah, I like that too in this amp." So it was cool. So little things like that. So there's similarities, I think they're both hot rod, based off traditional Marshall style designs and stuff. And I think they can be dialed to sound really, really, really similar if that's what you want to do. Any input on the new Charvel Sandema Style 1 guitars? Haven't seen them. I took a look at NAMM and saw like some of the cool throwback kind of pre-pro Charvel stuff they brought out this year for I guess it's 40th anniversary or something like that, and they were really cool. I love Charvel guitars. I always will. I still got my old Jackson. I love that guitar, and I always remember the day the Charvels showed up in Canada for the first time at Mother's Music in Edmonton. I went down and I saw them through the window, and I went in and they had such, there was like strats with like lightning bolts on them, and at the time I was just like, oh my God. And then you play them and the necks were incredible. Early Charvels, they're so cool. Macon is up in the top chat, Mr. Macon Tavares, and he says, did you have a chance to check out the Boss amp expander? What's my thoughts on it? I'm thinking the aux or amp expander, but tone is a priority. I haven't personally had a chance to try it. When they were bringing it out, they wanted me to go to Japan and check it out, and I didn't. I wasn't able to go on that trip because I was going to do this is 6 months ago. They wanted to send me over there to look at it along with some of the other people that got to go, like that pedal show guys and some other people. And I couldn't go, so I didn't get a chance to try it then. Then they brought it by Dave Friedman's shop, and I was invited to go see it there as well. And I had another Circlinic, so it was like the Circlinics kept coinciding with when the Boss folks wanted to show me that thing. And consequently, I haven't seen it yet, other than having seen it at the show. So I saw it at NAMM, and I haven't personally, been able to play through it or lay my hands on it. But Dave, who I really trust, Friedman, he says it sounds great. The effects in it are cool. The load seems cool. He really enjoyed the sound of it. Loading down an amp, he's very critical about, especially like with Marshall designs, loading them down and then reamping through something. And so he was listening to that very closely, I guess, and stuff, and he really thought it sounded good. So I'm excited to give it a try, but I haven't personally been able to play through it yet. Hopefully soon. But I can let you know Dave digs it. Moving down. Claudio's in the house. He says hi. And L. Scott Music's here. What's up, Lauren? He says it's a beautiful day. And I agree. What else we got here? Let's see. John is in the chat and he says, I've been listening to your album more lately. I love it. Thanks, man. Was wondering, do you print most guitar tracks with effects? Also, what delays and reverbs and other plugins do you mix with? That's a good question. Sometimes I print with effects these days, especially if I was using the aux when I recorded, because I would dial up a delay for a solo or something. And then I liked, because I did use the aux towards the end of making the record. And I enjoyed sometimes the sound. And I just went, I'm just going to print it, to be done with it. And then you're stuck with it. You're stuck with it if there's room mics or reverb or delay. But sometimes that's cool. I mean, it's just like a decision. You make it and then you just work with it. In Logic, some of the delays and stuff I use are the Sound Toys stuff. So I love Sound Toys plugins. They're great. They make a delay that's kind of one of the classic plugins. It's called the Echo Boy. So Echo Boy or Echo Boy Junior I used a lot. What else? God, I got rosacea right now. Look at that. I don't know if it's the panels, but I'm looking red. Echo Boy or Echo Boy Junior, really, really good. They do great tape style, great mod kind of Memory Man style delays. Like this is a lot of vibe, and by the way, all the Sound Toys plugins are just like there's one called Decapitator and another one called Devil Lock, as well as filters and stuff. Decapitator is a distortion plugin that's amazing, and Devil Lock is like a sort of crunchy compression that's just brick wall. Like you can put anything through it and it just blows it up and sounds really cool. I sometimes just use the Logic delay, like either tape delay or stereo delay, because it gives me what I want. If I just want a clean delay, it works perfect. So reverb, I tend to use the EMT stuff from UA, the 140 or 250 or whatever the two different ones are, which sound really great to me. I also use Ocean Way Studios plugin a lot, which is kind of a room simulator plugin more than just I guess that's reverb, but that is reverb, but it's kind of doing a different thing. It's simulating the studios at Ocean Way. And it just has a very real, when it's more of when I want to add like just a quick room sound to like not a long reverb tail. It won't do that, but it'll do like really realistic quick room kind of sound. So I like that a lot. Yeah. What else? Sean Tubbs Demos says, Glenn, my thoughts. I think Sean's amazing. I mean, first of all, he's an incredible guitar player. He does a great thing. It's like different than what I do, and I can't do what he does. That's for sure. Because he's just a really amazing guitar player, and he's a great guy too. Super cool guy. Just a different style approach, and that's the cool thing is that with the YouTube channels, you don't want to do the same thing as everybody else. You want to do your own thing, I think. And somebody's up in the top chat. Who's that? It's Mark. He says, knowing the Axe FX Kemper amp answers all three. Can you elaborate on how you use them? Prefer Axe on its own or in the loop? Amps and pedals combo seems best in digital boxes alone. Okay, thoughts on usage. So the Axe FX, the Kemper, if I had to say, like, if somebody was going to get, because they all do the job and they're all really good. Kemper, Axe FX, Helix, let's say, right? The Axe FX is the deepest device of all of them when it comes to tweaking. And as I said, I think last week, you can go down a rabbit hole of tweaking, but the interesting thing that happens with the Axe FX is the sound keeps getting better. That's what I found with it. So whereas in the past, devices that are really deep, that have a lot of parameters, I might feel like I'm getting lost and like, oh, I'm just struggling with this thing. And I sat down to play guitar 45 minutes ago, and instead I'm tweaking. I'm actually enjoying tweaking on the Axe FX, and the sound is getting better and better and better. So although it is kind of a tweaker's box for sure, it does amazing things, and the tones, and especially, a lot of the effects and stuff in it are just deep and wonderful. So, so for somebody that really likes dialing things in and wants a lot of like everything in there, but including the kitchen sink, the Axe FX is terrific for that. The Helix is maybe a slightly simpler device to use and similar. Like So it's not maybe quite as deep. The editor I really like on it. It's a little bit simpler, and I feel like maybe the Helix is more for people that want to dial up. They want a model or a true modeling 100% thing, but they want to dial up things quicker, and they maybe don't want to go too much into the deep editing. The Helix is great for that. They both sound really good. The Kemper, to me, is a different device in that I find the Kemper's great if you've got a stable of amps and you want to, profile your own amps. If you want to do that, so that mainly when I go to the Kemper, it's like, okay, I can't use my amp right now, but I want to get the sound of my PT100, and I've got a profile for it that I know I made. And I don't even use, I use some Michael Britt profiles a little bit, and they're great. But I think if the Kemper was just a modeler, I probably wouldn't use it that much. But because I've got my own amps in there, I'll use it for that. Plus, it's got the power amp built in, which neither the Helix or the Axe Effects that I have. I don't have an easy way to do a power amp. So if I want to plug I've got head direct profiles that I made 5 years ago that sound great, that are like of a few of my different amps. And if I want to plug the Kemper right into a cabinet, which I did the other day in here for somebody, and dial up the sound of, BE100, or dial up the sound of my SL68 set on 7 or whatever. I've got a couple of those direct head profiles in there, and I can plug it into a cabinet and get really a credible sound quickly. So that's what I think the Kemper's great for, is profiling your own amps and having those sounds in there. So you can garner from that maybe the different types of people I think might sort of bond with those different devices. Bill is up in the top chat, and he's asking, does the Sir Reactive Load have a dry line out? Yes, it does. Plan to go to Fryat, Power Station 2, and a 2 notes cab. But could I do the same with a Sir IR with tube power amp? Yes. Yeah. If you have a tube power amp, you can do that with the Reactive Load. Yeah. Or, solid state power amp, any kind of power amp. But yeah, if you've got kind of a flat tube power amp, you can come right out of the Sir Reactive Load. One side could go with cabs, if that's what you're asking, with the IRs to front of house or whatever, and the other side could go to a tube power amp and a cabinet on stage, and it kind of serves as a mic eliminator then, and then you've got your amp loaded down, and you could use a 100-watt amp and crank the shit out of it, and then run it into a tube power amp and do it at a lower volume. So yeah, you can do all those things you're asking. Mark is in the top chat. Oh, wait, I already answered that one. That was the last one. Macon Tavares up in the top chat again. Thank you, sir. He says, I'm in contact with a Sir dealer to order the PT15, but there's not a lot of sound samples yet. That's true. How would you describe the gain channels? They do Plexi Marshall thing, or is more like Fender? No, it's Marshall. Yeah, it's definitely like a Marshall-y. You can hear it in the kind of Van Halen-esque part that I came up with, for sure, like the rhythm part for the tune that I did in the video, the one video that's out there with Laurie playing. Those are the gain channels. There's no I did use a boost for like one of my lead parts in that. I used because I was playing through my pedal board, and I turned on my Archer or something for one of the lead sounds. But all the other sounds, all Laurie's parts and all my dirty rhythm parts, it's just purely the amp distortion, and it's very kind of plexi. It's like the PT100, really. You can think of it as like a Fendery clean channel and a Marshall drive channels, channel 2 and 3. But with that 6v6 power amp, the interesting thing is that what I find about those tubes is that on the cleaner side, they've got this nice sparkle and chime, and they kind of do that, low power Fender thing, 6v6 thing, I think Princeton's or whatever. And then as you grind them up and drive them harder, think more like Tweed meets Marshall meets, they have this broad wah kind of thing that is different than a 6L6 and kind of more akin to an EL34 almost, I find. So they got this best of both worlds kind of thing is what I'm getting at. So, yeah. And somebody's Ruslan is down in the regular chat here, and he says, what about your PT15 Sir amp? Do you think it's a new reality of amp world? You mean the features and stuff for direct recording and the IRs? I mean, I think we're going to see more and more amps with that stuff. I don't think all amps will have it, but it's a direct result of some of the new devices like the Kemper and stuff like that. They're giving you a certain flexibility. And I guess we were trying to say, well, what can we do to make the tube amp still appealing and give people some of that flexibility and have maybe some of the simplicity that, because that's a feature to me. The simple knobs on the front, tubes, you know what it sounds like. It sounds great. You know, the tube, it's all that stuff. You're not, that can be a feature when you combine it with, you know, simplicity and ease of use is a feature when combining it with a couple of deep features like IRs and a reactive load that let you plug direct in. So I think that's a beautiful thing. So we were just trying to think of, well, how can we make a better mousetrap, basically? So not all amps will have it because it's expensive. I mean, to do it right, it's to do a proper load, and you know, it's parts, and it's there's R&D involved in trying to figure out how to make it work, and you know, it's to get it all to fit under that one hood and make it small and not too heavy. You know, it's a lot involved. Christopher says, love your videos, especially the demos. Thanks. Would love to hear a PT amp in person someday. The tones in the videos are amazing. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. Murray says, how to get an agent to get better gigs, fellow Canadian. I never had an agent, so to speak, but what you got to do is find the folks. There are certain people in music towns that help putting bands together or facilitate that kind of stuff. There's also musical directors, MDs. I'll give you an example. Like in LA here, there's a guy named Ricky Miner. Ricky, for a lot of years, he does a lot of, like, I think I saw he just did the, you know, he'll do music for, like, he didn't do it this year. Another guy did the Grammys, but, you know, he'll do shows like the Grammys or shows like the Billboard Music Awards, or for many years he was the head of the band on Tonight Show for the final kind of run of Jay Leno's years. He was for a lot of years, he was the musical director on the Tonight Show. Ricky also would help put bands together in LA, and he was sort of more in the kind of like I guess kind of pop R&B kind of camp. But if you knew Ricky and he called you, you know, he'd call you and say, hey, can you come down and audition for this thing? And he'd help put auditions together and help put touring bands together, or maybe it'd just be first. He hired me once to do like a project that was like a showcase for a girl singer-songwriter, a female singer-songwriter that he was trying to get a younger girl. He's trying to get her a record deal, and he was working on that. And so I had to learn like 3 tunes and then come down and play with her at a rehearsal facility in LA. And then when I was there, he'd said, hey man, I got something else that I'm wondering about. Do you have time in like 2 weeks to come check out this other thing? Anyway, guys like that, you got to find like that are in the, you know, in the know. And the only way to do that is networking. So you got to get out and meet people, find the coolest stuff you can find in your town to do. And that's just by trial and error. Meet musicians, meet players, and then eventually meet people like this that do things like that. You know, and if it's not a music town, maybe they're not putting together things like that, but they will be, you know, there will be people with gigs that are, you know, booking private parties or booking corporates or doing things, you know, and I'm sure cities like Cleveland and you know, they've got their own insular music scene where there's people that have all the gigs sewn up and stuff. Those are the people you got to find out, you know, and then one day they say, hey, can you do this thing like with me on Saturday? And you'd go down and do a good job, and then they hire you for something else, and then you're kind of in. The more people you can meet like that, the better. So in a city like LA or New York or Nashville, it's all about meeting, you know, producers, musical directors, and, you know, certainly like there's these sort of headhunter types that help put bands together, you know, that where a record label needs a guitar player for a tour for one of their artists, and they'll call a certain person, and that person will put a call into 30 guitar players. Those are the people that professionally you kind of want to seek out. Yeah. And it's just networking like anything. Hey, Pete, I've seen you demo both the PCB Mastermind, pedal board, I think that's what you're saying, the RJM Mastermind, and Musicom Lab effects. Which do I recommend? They're both great. The Musicom Lab is the one I'm using, but the RJM is great too. It's a little bigger. I don't think it would fit on my board right now. Maybe it would, but it's a little bigger, and I do have one, and I love it. RJM folks, I've used a lot of their gear over the years. I used to have a rack with one of their, you know, rack switchers in it and stuff, and also their Y knots. I have 2 of those. So they make great stuff. Very easy to program. And the other thing with the RJM that's really cool is on some of the stereo loops, you can per preset make them either series or parallel. So if you've got effects like an H9 or something, anything you can do kill dry with, if you want to do some parallel stuff, and then on other patches you want to do series stuff, you can do that with an RJM. That's pretty cool. I don't think there's any other unit out there that does that exactly. Mark's so I recommend both. Look at the size and the dimensions, though. Take that into consideration. Musicom Lab I love too. I've been using their stuff for years, and Hyung Woo's a great supporter of mine. He's been a terrific dude, and he makes great stuff. So I've got no reservations about any of them. I think the RJM is probably easier to program, but I know Hyung Woo's like the architecture of the unit, and I know how to get around on it and program it. It just is maybe a little bit more of a learning curve. The RJM, they made it really easy to, like, for example, assign MIDI channels to like your Mobius or your H9, or it's all kind of, it comes almost preloaded with a lot of the common devices on the market kind of in it. It's hard to explain, but like when you're setting up the unit, the first thing of putting together the pedal board and then setting up the controller to make your patches and talk to all the different devices on your board, if you've got MIDI stuff, that's the hardest part. And RJM has made that pretty easy. Once you get it set, it's kind of a non-issue, no matter what the switcher. But Mark says, seems if you have amps and want the best tone without blasting amps and cabs and using your own direct head profiles, the best with cabs or monitors. Agreed. Are you talking about the Kemper, Mark? Seems like if you have amps and want the best tone without blasting amps and cabs, using your own direct head profiles, I would say the Kemper. If you've got heads and you're like, I love my amp, but I don't always want to take it, I'd like to make direct profiles of, if I could just have all my amps in one little box and then carry it around and it's got a power, well, that's the Kemper. And you're kind of describing a Kemper. So Jennifer's up in the top chat. What's up, Jennifer? She says, happy Sunday Sunday. The YouTube series is invaluable. Thanks. I've been doing the new, so you want to be a pro musician series. Would you consider, once completed, packaging the series as a masterclass, like e-commerce? Any reason why I'm not doing that now? You know what I thought I would do is kind of, to be honest, is just make a bunch of the videos. Like maybe I'll do, at least a couple months of them, like 5 or 8 or something like that, and then figure out if there's an angle. I do have a Patreon account, and it's like maybe there's an angle where I can continue on and keep doing the series, but do some content for Patreon as well. That was my thinking, and keep it. The main thing with YouTube that I find is that you want to give people. I'm still trying to grow my YouTube channel, expand my base. I'm trying to expand a little bit beyond just guitar pedals, like into things that maybe younger musicians that, are drummers or bass players or vocalists would find interesting. That's sort of what I'm thinking. Or people that are, want to be managers or, different aspects of the business. Like, how can I expand beyond just guitar pedals and keep that going as well? So you got to give people something. If there's any aspiring YouTube people out there, the key is you got to give back. That's what I find gets new subscribers, and you got to constantly be, do something that's not just self-promotion and not just, it's, as long as you're doing that, then you're getting ahead and people appreciate it. And so, I'll put in a certain amount of time into making the videos and stuff. And then beyond a certain point, it's kind of a little bit like I've learned a lot from Tim Pierce about the way he brought out his master class, and he gives away a ton of free information on YouTube and then says, hey, if you want to come sign up for my master class, there's more videos there and more information. And I'll probably sort of go that route with it. Rich Monk says, any tips? He's up in the top chat. Thanks, man. He says, any tips on accompanying acoustic singer-songwriters with electric, such as how to practice for that style? Yeah, it can be. That's an interesting question. It can be challenging. I mean, I find the best thing to do is you need to play the role of, you're accompanying them. And sometimes it can be great to have some ambient sort of, textural swell kind of sounds. And you want to the other thing you want to do is get used to playing around the vocal, which can be a challenging thing. So when the vocalist is singing, sometimes they want you to answer their phrases with the guitar part and not to step on them. And there's no way to really practice that other than to maybe listen to that style. John Mayer brought out a new song this week that I think is great. And I guess I just feel like it's called, listen to stuff like that and listen to how he intertwines, he's his own accompaniment, but, imagine that you were playing with him and then you've got to play those solos and those lines and stuff. singer-songwriter style, very organic. Listen to that kind of music and stuff, and then listen to how the guitar fits in, and maybe learn some of those tunes and practice that style of like fitting in Mark Knopfler. I mean, Sultans of Swing is like the ultimate, singing, rhythm, answering the line with a phrase. It's like maybe learn Sultans of Swing and some similar songs like that, and melodic phrases that move around, and that's kind of all you really need to do. Beyond that, it's like really it's textural and ambient and stuff like that, and figuring out where to lay out, where to not play. But it's a fun challenge, doing that kind of stuff. Sometimes breaking it down to just like a singer with an acoustic guitar and a guitar can be a really fun thing. Electric guitar can be fun doing kind of not with full drums and not other instruments. Gives you lots of space. Let's see. I better move along here. Oh, there's someone else. You guys are up in the top chat lots, which I do appreciate. Too kind. Peter Urbans, he's up there, and he's in Edmonton, my hometown. What's up, homie? I know it's been cold. Stay out of the cold. Your tip about JJ in V1 is spot on. I put an EH into V1 on my boogie, and the tone is so much more open and organic. Great. Yeah, JJs in V1 are good for one thing, which is eliminating microphonics. And other than that, they always sound dark to me, and I don't like it. It can be okay with distortion. I was talking to Dave Friedman about that the other day, because it's really difficult as an amp manufacturer, because when you're trying to put out a bunch of, you're trying to ship a bunch of amps and half your preamp tubes are microphonic, it can be really time consuming and expensive just trying to find a good tube for V1 these days in an amp, the first preamp tube slot that isn't noisy and microphonic. And that's why a lot of people will use the JJs, because it's just, customers don't complain when they get the amp that the tube is whistling. But I find JJs to be dark. Okay on distortion, because sometimes that's, warming it up a bit. But on clean sounds, it could be like a veil over the amp, So I'm glad you liked it, Peter. Thank you. And stay warm up there. Let's see. Post Talk is up in the top chat. He says, do you switch between or prefer alternate picking or economy picking for string switching? I'm an alternate picker. I got like 3 sweep licks that I do, and that's about it. Are you familiar with the band Necrophagist? Yeah, I've heard of those guys. Who was really into them was Kevin Sir was really into that stuff back when he was like a shredder. That's John's son, who is so talented, plays drums and guitar, and he's an electrical engineer, and he had a lot to do with the PT-15 actually designing it. But anyway, I don't really know their music that well and stuff, but I know it's like kind of crazy ballistic. What else we got here? Moving down. Ever use a Fryat power station with a modeler into a real cab? I have not, actually, and I would like to try that actually, and see. The Fryat I think has a relatively flat kind of 6L6 power amp, so it would probably be a real good choice for that. I hope I answered that one question up in the top chat enough about alternate picking or economy picking. Yeah, mainly I'm a alternate picker, I would say. I can't do that. I worked for a while in that Frank Gambale video all about sweep picking that came out it's called Super Chops or something. I can't remember, but it came out in the 80s, and he had the yellow guitar on the cover of the Ibanez, and I tried to do that style and practice some of those licks for like a couple months with the kind of where, if the idea is if you're going from one string down to the next string, you're always doing 2 downstrokes, or if you're going from one string up to the next string, you're always doing 2 upstrokes and kind of economy picking. And it looks kind of like your hand is barely moving, and he does it amazing, but I could never do it. I got more into the kind of the Steve Morse, strict alternate picking. That always worked better for me. Yours truly says, can you talk about the specs of your Gil Yeren Les Paul replicas pickups? That thing sounds amazing. Has that telly thing. Was wondering about which magnets. So Gil does the Alnico 4 and Alnico 5 thing. Alnico 4 in the bridge and Alnico 5 in the neck. And they're, unbalanced coils. And I think either his wife or daughter makes the pickups for the guitars. And I don't know much about them beyond that. I don't know anything about the the pickups, but I love the sound of them. And certainly when we did the PT Thornbucker pickups, I said, I want to try this magnet combo that Gil does. You know, I didn't want to like examine his pickups and take one apart or something like that. That would be rude and not cool. But I just said, can we try like doing like a PAF with this certain magnet combo and stuff? Because I love that guitar. And so I assume, you know, his pickups are just kind of like, I don't know what the gauge of the wire or any of that stuff is that he uses, but essentially they just have this open kind of beautiful Jimmy Page-ish sort of, you know, telly on steroids kind of thing going on. And the great thing about the Alnico 4 I find in the bridge is that it's not quite as piercing as an Alnico 5. Sometimes you want that piercing thing. Like you want the aggression of Alnico 5 is big bass and quite, you know, hot top end and stuff like that. The Alnico 4 is more balanced all the way across, I find. So for certain sounds, it might not be, if you want, you know, really aggressive tones, it's maybe not the right pickup. But the beautiful thing is when it gets distorted with fuzz or with, you know, like a cranked up plexi sort of sound or something, you can go up high on the high E string and it sings and it doesn't hurt your ear, you know. And that's one of the things I really like about the pickups that Gil makes, for sure. I am so far back in the chat that I better move down, I think, to the bottom and see kind of what's going on down there. So sorry, guys. Ask a question again if you wrote it in the thing, because I got really far back. Old Guy's Guitar Vlog. He says there's a kid on YouTube that does a solo electric version of Sultans of Swing, and sounds incredible. I haven't seen that. I would like to see that. Post Hawk is up in the top chat, and he says, do you prefer nickel fretwire or stainless steel? Also, do you have experience with the Evertune? I've played Evertune guitars a little bit. I actually have one here right now that my pal Lauren lent me. They're cool. I don't know how I feel about it ultimately, because it's like I do like to do alternate tunings and just do drop D on a whim, and you can't do that with the thing. So, but it is kind of neat to maybe have one around, you know, with an Evertune. Yeah, for a studio, it would be great to have like maybe one in drop D, one in standard, and one in E flat. You know, 3 guitars with Evertunes around, and you could always just pick them up and know you're in tune. If you're frustrated and the temperature's changing and you can't seem to keep a guitar in tune, just grab the Evertune and get the part done. I know a guy that owns a great big recording studio here in LA, and he has one around because when young bands come in and people can't tune that well, he goes, here, play this guitar. And, you know, the Evertune is a system of, for people that don't know, it's a bridge with this system of springs, and it's all like mechanical. There's no DSP going on or anything, but it keeps the guitar in tune perfectly all the time. The guitar will not go out of tune. And you can still bend and everything like normal. So it's a really interesting device, but you have to leave the guitar in that tuning, and it's quite a big piece of hardware, this bridge. So nickel or stainless steel on a guitar, on my vintage guitars, I like nickel. On a new Sir, I like stainless steel. On a Les Paul style build, 24 3/4 style guitar, I like nickel, even if it's a new one. So that's my, but on my Sirs, I use stainless steel, and I'm totally cool with them. So on those guitars, you know, the polished, they're always shiny, they always sound great, and they don't pit. My Yeren is actually getting like, I think it's almost time for a refret. It's and I've only had it since like 2013, I guess, and they're getting like roasted, you know, because they're the old style, you know, nickel, and I just play the guitar a lot. So have you seen Jason Hook's Hired Guns yet? Were you asked to be involved? It was a great watch. That's Jeremy. No, I don't know Jason actually, and he didn't contact me. But there's a lot of hired guns in LA, so it would be too many to put in a movie. That's for sure. I haven't seen it yet. I know Phil's in it, and I do want to watch the movie. Let's see. Have you had or having any interest in playing 7 or 8 string guitars? That's Steve. You know, I kind of don't. I like my baritones. Like, I'd rather have a long scale 6-string guitar than I would a 7-string guitar where I can go up really high on the neck and play like sweep arpeggios or something. Tony McAlpine, I mean, he's great at it, and he does that thing. And he said, "Why don't you get a 7-string?" You know, and I was just kind of like, I don't know. It's just not really. I like the baritone thing more. Like when the videos you see me do with the Dano. I mean, it's all the way down to B, so it's the same thing. You just don't have the top string. And I just like that long, I don't know, they just sound like, the baritone sounds gnarly to me, you know? And 7 strings to me just, I don't know. I don't have a hell of a lot of interest. But I do love alternate tunings, and I like low tunings, and I like long scale. So let's see. David Smith says Tom Morello was giving it his wisdom, excuse me, God, on the rig rundown. Smart guy. Yeah, Tom Morello's rig rundown was cool. I just saw that this week. Actually, I watched it, and I love Tom's approach to gear. I love his, like, man, he really did a great rig rundown where he shows his whole toggle switch thing and doing with the slide, and he talks a lot about his effects and how he uses them and just sets them at one thing. And he's a stylist and he does his thing. And it's like, I love his attitude about just kind of setting the knobs where it sounds the best. And then I'm going to write songs and make music. And that's great, and boy, is he ever, he's been in a bunch of bands. He's lots of creative output. He's really prolific. And that's, to me, what it should be about, is we talk a lot about gear here and stuff, but Tom's a guy that picks some simple gear, and just rolls with it and writes songs. And that's what everybody should be doing. And following, I think he's a good example to follow. I think he's kind of extreme about it. I think it'd be okay to check out a new pedal every now and then, but his to not go down that rabbit hole. And yet he gets a lot of tones, doesn't he? It's using the shit that you've got to the maximum. And that's what I like about Tom. And he's such a great speaker, kind of a positive, one thing about the Chris Cornell tribute concert, memorial kind of concert, was that not a lot of people spoke, and Tom did, and I really appreciated that he kind of stood out there, and he's a very forceful speaker. He spoke well at Chris's service as well, and he has a real, like, I don't know, he's kind of like, he'd be a great politician, because he really knows how to get a crowd, and right there in the palm of his hand, and he speaks with authority and force, and he knows what to say to really get to the heart of it quickly, and in a few sentences or less, he's really making his point. And anyway, I have a lot of respect for Tom Morello. Mark says, there's another, this is a good point. We're getting on to back to gear. There's another JJ ECC 83 or 12AX7, the MG, supposed to have fuller and richer mids. I've been meaning to try them. And don't forget, there's also the long plate JJ. And I've wanted to try that because I'm always sort of bad-mouthing the short plate one. But they do have other ones, and I would be fully willing to give them a try and check them out. I'd love to see what they're about, A couple folks up in the top chat. Thank you guys so much. Can't express my appreciation enough. Vincent is up there. What's up? He says, wondering what advice you would give to startup music companies for interfacing with artists, specifically getting their products to them for review, despite all the companies doing that. That's an interesting, like a liaison between maybe the magazines and the companies making product. It can be hard for small companies, for instance. You might have a cool business idea there, like for small companies that are just like, boutique pedal manufacturers and that kind of thing, to get their units to companies, Premier Guitar, let's say, or Guitarist in the UK, or, to the different people like me that make pedal videos and things. You might have something there. I don't know if I have advice, but I think it's an interesting idea. There is some companies like that I've worked with a little bit recently that have organized, like when I did, for instance, a 5-delay shootout with Sweetwater. There was a company called Music Marcom that contacted me and said, hey, Sweetwater's interested in working with you on a video that's just kind of a fun video where you show 5 different delay pedals. Would you want to do that? So that was something that they helped. It wasn't Sweetwater contacting me directly. So there's something there, and I think you could do it pretty effectively by. We'll talk about it more. But I think that's an interesting idea, Vincent. I think you're maybe onto something. Dave is up in the top chat, and thanks, Dave. He says, just sent you a Facebook friend request. Please accept. This is an example of networking. Dave, you are too kind, my friend. One thing about my personal Facebook. Here's the thing about my personal Facebook. Since I started it, I was late to the game in Facebook, like 2010 or something. I decided to not just add people that I didn't know that were like that weren't part of my friends. And I did add some people, and then I went, this is going to get too crazy. It's going to fill up and there's going to be 5,000 people in here. And then in my feed is going to be a bunch of stuff and I don't actually know these people. Like I'm not It's not my family, and it's not my. And I quickly just sort of decided that my personal Facebook, which I actually put in the whatever tagline or whatever, if you go look at my Facebook, it says, this is just for my friends and my family or folks I know personally. No, like, and it's no offense or anything like that. I just wanted to make it. I could actually go through and do some cleaning in there and make it even more just about the, maybe the 50 or 100 people in my orbit that I know. And then I use my music Facebook, the Pete Thorn Facebook account, which is, I think, facebook.com/guitar nerd. That's the one where I kind of, and then I can go in there and interact with people more about the guitar thing and stuff like that. But I wanted my personal Facebook just to be like, my sister and people like that, So that's why I've got a lot of friend requests in there, and I generally don't answer them, and it's on my, I don't reply to them because I just wanted it to be like close family and friends, my music teacher from back in Edmonton, and guitar players in LA that I know and stuff like that. So you're too kind, my friend. You did the top chat up there. I appreciate it, but I've just kind of always approached it that way. Having said all that, I don't use Facebook that much anymore. I got pissed off with Facebook. I just feel like they're kind of like and I do use Instagram, which is like hypocritical, because Facebook owns Instagram, but I don't really like Facebook as a company. I wish something else had come along, like much like Facebook replaced MySpace. We need a better mousetrap, and I wish that something would come along and actually, because Facebook actually pisses me off. And so even my personal one, if I did accept your friend request, I'd never be on there. I can't. I think I opened it up once this week and looked at it. I don't keep up on the posts on there anymore, and I just kind of like, I'm more on Twitter and Instagram, and and then beyond all that, just making YouTube. It's like there's so much stuff, right? I'm sure you guys feel it. It's like how can we all keep up with all the ways that people try and stay in touch with you these days, right? Text to answer, of course, traditional phone calls, FaceTime, and then you've got, I've got Facebook music account, I got a Facebook private account, I got Instagram DMs, I've got Twitter and Twitter DMs. How the hell do you get anything done? How do you write songs or accomplish anything? And I know everybody out there feels the same way. It's like, there's just so many ways that people get in touch with you now and stuff. So it's a challenge, but that we all deal with, right? So Lemmer David says, "Hi Pete, how can I achieve a Nuno Betancourt type of sound? What do you think is his sound secret?" Extremely defined sound. To be honest, dude, it's the way he plays. He's such a commanding guitar player, and it's his technique. He doesn't even use anything special. I think he uses kind of run of the mill sort of Marshalls these days. Doesn't he use like DSLs or something like that? He strikes me as he's got a hot Bill Lawrence pickup in the bridge of his guitar that's probably kind of bright and crunchy, but it's in his hands. This is the main thing. He doesn't really do that much. He kind of reminds me a little bit like Morello, where he's just using kind of like run-of-the-mill amps and stuff these days. I found it interesting when he did I think it was the third Extreme album, he used a Vibrolux or something like that, like a brown Fender Reissue Vibrolux that he just kind of cranked on 10 and then ran it into a Marshall cabinet or something, I think. I might have some of that wrong. Maybe somebody out there knows more. But he used an unconventional, it was got maybe a 6v6 kind of Fender, and he liked the tone of it and was using that. So, it's interesting. But he's one of those guys where it's just, he's a commanding, I've been playing some Van Halen stuff this week because I'm going to go out and play a few songs with some friends this week and do some songs from Diver Down. And you have to play with such reckless abandon and hard and accurate and yet kind of this punk rock kind of attitude when you do a song like Hang 'em High. That, I've just been trying to kind of remember it. Secrets is the same way. But it's not distorted. But there's this relentless kind of rhythmic accuracy and to Eddie's guitar playing, and Nuno has a lot of that too. That kind of like it's right hand accuracy and just sort of balls out like hard playing, but not hard in a shitty just whacking the guitar away. It's like aggressive. What was that song? Like, there's no way to do that extreme riff, whatever that song I just sang the riff to, but I can't remember the name it is. But he's just it's explosive and it's coming from the pick, you know, so that really is the main thing. Yeah. We got 515 people online. Thanks for being here, you guys. Thank you. Got a favorite humbucker pickup brand, says Pinch Loaf. That's a great name. I'm gonna go with the Sir Thornbucker. But, you know, I like a lot of different pickups. And Sir makes great ones. Some other ones, just to be fair to everybody else out there, I grew up with Seymour Duncan pickups, and I've always been a fan. I think Seymour Duncan makes great pickups. So there's some of my favorite Duncans I've had over the years would be pickups like the Custom 5, the Custom, the God, I had all I used to buy them all, the full shred, the Trembuckers, the of course JBs. Still got a JB in my old Jackson in the bridge from the 80s that I put there when I was a kid. I was crazy about Seymour Duncan pickups. I remember getting in a car accident, driving down to the local music store to buy the new Trembucker when it came out. I had to get there right after school, and I ended up like getting rear-ended. That sucked. Alnico 2 Pro single coils. I bought a set of those. I like those. As far as like other pickups go that I've had that I really like, let me think. Have I got anything else in here? There was this guy named Will Boggs that ended up I believe he was a good guy with good intentions, but he had business problems. He ended up taking a lot of people's money that ordered pickups from him, and that pissed a lot of people off out there. But he was a nice guy. When I knew him as a guy, I think he just maybe got in over his head, making promises to people that he couldn't keep or something. But he made me a bunch of sets of pickups, WB pickups, and this is going back 10 years or something like that. And man, those were good pickups. So if you could, I bet there's some out there that you know, you could find. They're probably expensive now, but the WB kind of PAF-y stuff that he made they were really, really good pickups. Voodoo, I used to have a Voodoo you know, Alnico 5 kind of PAF pickup that was great. And of course the old T-tops that are in one of the greatest pickups I have is in my 335, which is back there in the case. Oh, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention. Okay. I'll finish my thought. You know, they're not T-tops, but I've got a PAF in my 335 as well as an original patent number. They're low whine. They're like 7.3K or something, and they just sound amazing. They're like they're about the same as like a Telly pickup as far as the output goes, but man, do they sound good. And then Ron Ellis, it makes these unbelievable pickups. He's you know, one guy in his garage doing it, but the pickups he made for my Telly are extraordinary. He made me a Strat set, and I still haven't put them in a guitar. And I'm reminded now I got to write him and apologize for. It's been like a year, and I just haven't had time to drop them in a guitar. But I really want to try the Strat pickups. The Telly pickups are absolutely amazing, I thought. And you can see that Telly in a lot of my videos and stuff. And I just love the way that guitar sounds. Let's see. By the way, everyone, True Fire did lessons last week, says Old Guy's Guitar Vlog. Josh Smith and with Kirk Fletcher. That'd be great, man. I'd love to watch those. Yeah, both Kirk and Josh, great guys and stellar guitar players, and there's stuff to be learned there for sure. Let's see. Moving down. Braxall says, could you please tell me if the HX Stomp is good enough instead of an H9 Strymon Big Sky or Mobius? I thought you said you were going to use the HX Stomp. I've been thinking about using the HX Stomp on my board. Yeah, like replacing one pedal with an HX Stomp, either an H9 or maybe the Boss Delay, the DD500 I have on there, which is great. But I think I could get the delays that I need out of the HX Stomp and be happy. So I may do that, you know, because what I realized about putting the HX Stomp, if there's nobody that's thought about this out there, is that it does a lot of effects, right? But it'll also replace an amp and speaker cab. It's a modeler in a pedal that's the size of a Strymon, you know, Timeline or something. So one of the interesting things about it is if your whole rig goes down on tour, or if you just want to take your pedal board and go do a session somewhere and you don't want to be bothered bringing an amp, you've got a whole rig on your pedal board then with the HX Stomp there. So that's a real appealing thing for me. And, you know, so I think I might at least give it a try because I do like the HX Stomp a lot. It's a Helix in a pedal. It's tiny. Or she here. What else we got? How does the Thornbucker Plus neck compare to, say, the DSV neck under gain for lead passages? There actually is no Thornbucker Plus neck. There's only one Thornbucker neck model. The Plus model is only for the bridge. You could put it in the neck, of course. It would probably sound cool, but yeah, it's only the bridge. So you're asking about the DSV neck under gain for lead purposes. So the thing with the DSV pickups, I believe, DSV stands for double screw vintage. SSV is single screw vintage, and that means like so on a humbucker pickup, the two coils, one's a slug coil and one's a screw coil on most style humbuckers. Sir does this line of pickups called DSV that's got double screws for screws for both, and they tend to sound sort of more MIDI, I think. Like that's what John says. They're a little bit less bright, and they can be nice for lead sounds because they've got this kind of like a little bit more mid-range and kind of like, so if you're a single string kind of maybe, or Alan Holdsworth or something, if you're into that type of thing, mainly, lead lines and stuff, that would be what I'd do with the double screw. If you want maybe Jimmy Page tones and stuff like that, and kind of more rhythm guitar is kind of your bag, or stringy kind of sounds, maybe the DSV isn't the way to go. Stace Bernard is up in the top chat, and he says, do you own a Rufus? What situations would you use it? It's so lush and saturated. I agree. Ian Thornley used that thing to great effect. The Rufus is a great fuzz. First of all, it'll work on any pedal board with buffered anything in front of it, so which is really useful to me. So in a situation on a pedal board like mine, I need to use a fuzz that works well with a buffer. So I definitely use it on my board. I have my Boss FZ2 or whatever it's called, the Hyper Fuzz on there, which I just absolutely love, and I gotta have because it's just so cool. I haven't actually directly A-B'd with a Rufus to see if I get close. The Rufus Reloaded. So the regular Rufus has two different sounds in it, and then I have a Rufus Reloaded here that has the Octavia type thing in it. That's the one that I have here. So you could use it for like regular fuzz and Octavia. It's just a great versatile fuzz. That both the Reloaded and the regular one. If nobody's tried it, it's a really cool pedal. It's not going to do the cleanup thing like a fuzz face. That's the only thing. A true fuzz face that is germanium and interacts with the guitar pickups. That's a different thing, almost like a different kind of pedal, a different kind of effect. I think. You gotta separate fuzzes into the fuzz face germanium, interact with the guitar pickups cleanup thing, and then the sort of the more big muff or whatever, or style that don't respond to the volume control on the guitar the same way, or more like a big fat saturated primitive distortion sound. I think of them as different effects almost. Let's see. Yargnad says, would I consider a Sir PT model guitar with a Stevens extended cutaway? No, not for me, really. To be honest, dude, I'm almost a 21 fret guitar kind of guy. Like I have guitars in here the Sirs that I've specified to be 21 frets instead of 22. I'm not really I don't need to go that high on the guitar. The highest I need to get up to is, that D or E that you can get with the bend on the high E string. So I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist that way than I am. Like I don't want to play up that high anyway. But that's just my style. So having said that, the cutaway that's on my guitar it's really easy to get up there, and it's with the Sir neck joint, the way that the neck meets the body and the kind of the heel is what I'm getting at. It's very easy to play, I think. Let's see. Oh, this is a cool post. Jim Lund says, I took your advice and focused on performance rather than technique at our last gig. I got great feedback from the crowd. Thanks so much for the great advice. That's awesome, dude. Yeah. We could all stand to not worry so much and get out there and have fun and perform a bit. People want to see a show. So I'm glad that you did that. That's cool. Awesome. And it's more fun, right? To not be so like this week I got to go do these Van Halen tunes that play Hang 'em High and stuff. And it's commanding. And if I got two inside my head, I might not be that great at it. But I think my plan is to go just have a couple margaritas and then go do it. Get up and just lay into it, and just whatever happens because it's like there's an element to that music that I love so much, that is the punk rock element. There was so much punk rock in Van Halen. You almost have to be you have to get a good night's sleep and be kind of like I don't want to say lit, but you got to be kind of like there's an element to it that's just flying off the rails, like, and you got to be on and like just be in it and like not let go, kind of like, you know, in order to play that music really well. So it's fun to not be too, you know, whatever the music you're playing, to just perform and have a good time, you know. Let's see. Are you still using the Strymon timeline? If not, what's the replacement? I have my Strymon timeline. I didn't use it for the last year. I used a Boss DD500 instead. That's from Jesse. But timeline's a great delay. You know, still have it here. There's something wrong with my timeline. That's the only thing, though. Too the button that the big one that you push and turn for effect type, like the different delay types. It's never worked right. For like the last, like, so it's intermittent, and when I'm program a name, it takes me forever to scroll the thing around, then finally it catches and I get the letter I want. I find that frustrating, so I should get my timeline fixed. But yeah, anyway, hey Pete, I think you're probably just a few years older than me, so I'm curious. That's Robert's Guitar Dungeon. Who were your earliest guitar inspirations growing up? I've always credited James Hetfield for inspiring me. Yeah, James was, I mean, I don't know if he was a big influence on me, but I did see Metallica on the Master of Puppets tour right after Cliff Burton had passed away. They just got Jason Newsted when I saw them. And my sister was a huge Metallica fan, so I grew up hearing them around the house a lot. You know, Ride the Lightning stuff. She was into them, like Kill 'Em All, like before, pre anybody almost. She knew about that band when they were still pretty underground. And so I heard a lot of that music. And that was definitely getting into my head. But so some of my earliest guitar influences, my biggest influence was the Beatles and Pete Townsend, The Who, for sure. The first song I ever learned on guitar was I Can't Explain. And then right after that, I pretty much got into Van Halen and AC/DC and stuff like that. I was hearing that music. And then the 80s blew up, and it was Steve Vai and Satriani and all that kind of stuff was coming out. And I was hearing that, as well as like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Mark Knopfler and different, you know, so many great guitar players of different styles. You know, Prince was amazing. You know, I remember, you know, when Purple Rain came out, you know, and it's just like, I guess that was like his style of guitar playing, which had a lot of, you know, Hendrix in it, I guess, was, I didn't really grow up listening to, there's Jimmy back there. He's like, what do you mean, man? But I didn't grow up like really hearing Hendrix like right off the bat. And then I got it later on, you know, but maybe seeing Prince and stuff was like, you know, in like 84, because that music was coming out. I was like, wow, he's a wild guitar player, you know, and of course discovered Jimmy, you know. But anyway, that's some of my stuff that I was into. Okay, lost in the chat again, but let's see. Virtual Tennis Coach says, hi, Pete. I'm reamping a riff with Strymon L cap delay via an aux box and want to print the delay on a separate track to the dry guitar tone to blend later in the mix. Any tips? Well, let's see. I'm reamping a riff with a Strymon L cap delay via an aux box. I want to print the delay on a separate track to the dry guitar tone. So you're using the aux. I don't know, man. That's hard. It's hard for me like to envision exactly how you're doing it. I guess what you could do, since you're reamping, I'll tell you what, why don't you just print the guitar part with the delay on it, the way that you hear it and the way that you want to hear it, or mostly delay, and then turn off the delay and print it again. You're reamping it, so you could just print it twice, once with the delay on and once with the delay off, and then you can blend them later, and it should be exactly the same except for the delay, right? Maybe set the mix like super high on the delay, print it, and then turn the delay off and print it, right? And then you'll have two tracks, and you can mix and match between them later. There's everything bouncing around. Sorry about that. Looks like the screen is, it's weird. It's like my desk isn't as stable as it usually is. All right. Which tequila in your margaritas? I had a Casamigos Blanco last night situation. I also had after that I had because I don't like to drink too many. If I have drinks these days, I'm at that age where it's like 2 is probably enough. 3 is going to hurt in the morning. So I'll have a margarita, because I like margaritas and I like tequila. And it'll be a some kind of Blanco tequila in the margarita, and fresh lime, agave. That's it. That's what I like. Sometimes a Cadillac. And then I had a glass of Fortaleza Anejo after that, which was expensive. It was $20 at the bar I was at, but man, it was good, smooth as can be. So that was my beverages last night. Let's see. I think. Oh. Reading. I'm sorry, I don't understand. You guys are talking amongst yourselves. I thought it was a question, but it's not. I'm reading the chat. And hi, Pete. How much gear is set up in your studio? Are you always pulling things to change connection? As an example, how do you change from amp to amp while using the aux? That's from Dan Whitford. Well, Dan, I don't want to get too into it because I already talked about the switcher quite a bit, but basically what's going on is up there's the amp Pete switcher, and that allows me to switch any amp instantly into the aux or into the Surreactive load, or eventually here when I get my cabinet room set up into a speaker cabinet. So look up amp Pete on AMPETE, and you could just Google that and you'll see what his amp switchers do. But that's how I do it. It's you plug into the switcher and the switcher's connected to all the amps in your cabinets, and you can easily switch between things really quickly. And it makes it really great as far as workflow goes. Mike is up in the top chat. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. He says, miracle, I have a locking bridge arriving Tuesday for my PT. Tips on how to use. Which one, Mike? You mean you have a one for which locking bridge? You have the new Wilkinson? Is that the one that you're getting? And if so, just answer down in the regular chat if you want, and I'll try and steer you towards how it works and stuff like that. Maybe I can just show you really quick, like how the. I think you're talking about this bridge, just for anybody that's interested. So the bridge basically functions like a regular bridge. You're going to string it through the back, right? Just like through the block and string it up. And then what happens is the string comes over the saddle, and you can see these little black Allen screws on top here. Goes under that screw. And once you're done stringing the guitar up, you just lock those screws down with an Allen wrench. Boom, you're done. That's it. Very, very, very simple. And the guitar stays in tune like crazy. Like it's basically as good as a Floyd. Once you get it set up and everything's all tight and it's intonated, and you know, it's really great. A terrific bridge. I think that's what the bridge that you're talking about. But let's see. Okay, moving down in the chat. You guys are talking amongst yourselves, so I gotta move beyond some of that. And let's see. Virtual Tennis Coach says, thanks so much for the reply to my question. Perfect. Can I donate to your channel? Can't get the top chat to work here. Thanks again. Hey, man, it's okay. Yeah, so many of you folks are kind and do the top chat thing. It's okay. I really appreciate you saying that. You can get a PT t-shirt or a mug from my YouTube if you want, though. I've got those new merch store that's got mugs and hoodies and all kinds of stuff like that. I still have yet to get my mug. I need to buy one of my own mugs so that I can drink coffee here. Eric, ever played an Eric Johnson Strat? Thoughts? I liked them when I heard it. I've never plugged one in. They feel pretty cool. Just like a nice Strat with kind of like a V-shaped neck. I've never played one of the ones with the what's the word I'm looking for? F-hole, the hollow one, which I think is kind of, I don't know. It's just not my deal. But they seem like a good option, you know? Let's see. Pete, do you remember getting your first Marshall? I do. My first Marshall that's from Bill. It was a MOSFET. Does anybody remember those? The MOSFET Marshalls in the 80s, which is basically like a JCM 800 style amp. Mine was like the one with the two channels, the clean channel and the dirty channel. 2205, I think, was the MOSFET version, and it sounded really good. I had a 410 cabinet with it, and it's funny because somebody contacted me recently from Edmonton and said, "Did you ever own a Marshall 410 cabinet?" And I said, yeah, I did. I had this, Marshall MOSFET, and that was the cabinet that came with it. And they said, I think I just bought it from somebody. Somebody's got one for sale in Edmonton, and they advertised it as being my old one. So I thought that was kind of cool. I don't know what happened to that Marshall head. I would love to have that thing again, because it was a good sounding amp, pretty solid amp for like a kid, And I got rid of it and got a Boogie eventually, a Studio 22 and a power amp. And first I got a Caliber 50. Yeah, the original one with the L84s. And then I got it wasn't called a Studio 22, it's called a Caliber the one rack space preamp that I think the only person of note that used it was Kurt Cobain. But I had one. It worked pretty good. Hey Pete, have you ever played Comet 60? That's from Leon. Not really. I think I tried one once. I have my Concords here, and I talked a little bit about that last week. I think the 60 is a little bit more of a 6L6 kind of affair, but also do the gainy thing. And what was that? I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah. So, me being kind of EL34 Marshall style tones is what I really dig. I got the Concord. So I've had a couple Concords, and I love Comet amps. I think they're great. 60 though, probably be something I'd be into now, because I'm expanding my horizons tonally. I want to try different stuff. And the Comets, Mark Knopfler really dug it, used it to great effect, right? Let's see. Where's my gig this week, says Joe. Lucky Strike. The Lucky Strike in LA. Do I own any vintage Fenders or Gibsons? Well, I have a 63 335. I have a 66 Fender Tele, and I have a 64 Strat. So all my guitars are within a few years of the 60s, the old ones. Have I ever played a Bogner Ecstasy? I had one. I owned one in the 90s. 101B, I guess. 100B or 101B. One of the early ones. And used it for a while on tour and stuff like that. It was cool. Odin Stan says, so you ship to the UK. Is that for my Teespring stuff? It's a Teespring store. So yeah, I think they'll ship anywhere. Is that for my, you're talking about for the merch? Yeah, I believe so. If they'll ship pretty much anywhere, I think. And if anybody's interested in that stuff, the coffee cups and the t-shirts and stuff, Pete Thorn shirts, it's like underneath my YouTube videos, there's a link that you can click, and it shows all the stuff there. There's a hoodie, 2 t-shirts, women's and men's, a mug, coffee mug. That's the one I really want to get. I want to get the mug. Okay. Moving up, because I drink too much damn coffee. Going towards the end of the chat here. Speaking of Kurt Cobain, said Esben, do you ever try the Sansamp Classic pedal he used on In Utero? Yeah, I've used the Sansamp Classic. We used to use that thing a lot in my first band that I had when I was in LA, which was called Surreal McCoys. And we used an original Sansamp to record a lot of the guitar tracks. The drums were done with a real drummer playing a drum cat, like samples. And we would record, stereo drum cat to demo, and then we'd use the Sansamp for guitar and bass, and it worked good. It was cool. And I remember Frank Symes, old friend of mine and great guitar player, used to use that pedal into a high watt, and he'd set the high watt clean, and then he used the Sansamp for his distortion and stuff, and he got a pretty cool tone that way. Yeah. What cabs do I plan to run, says Poo Ninja. He wants to know about cabs, I guess, that I'm running in the room here for studio. So I'm going to I'll have a 412 set up. I have an old 412 with blackbacks that sounds great. It's the cab that I used on songs like Kyushu Blues off Pete Thorn 2. It's a really, really good sounding. Blackbacks from '78. They're basically like the greenbacks of the day. They just had blackbacks on them, and it's a 1960B style cabinet, like very sort of vintage Marshall looking cabinet that's made by Blockhead. So I'm going to put that cabinet in there, mic it up, and then I'll also have an open back 212, I think, that has both a blue and an A type in it, 2 selections. So open back divided by 13 cab, and I'm going to leave those cabinets in my cabinet room and just leave them mic'd up all the time. I have enough mics now where I can just kind of like have a couple 57s on each cab and have a ribbon on each cab and just be done with it. And then I've got my closed back 412, my open back 212, And then I've got my loads, the aux and stuff, and that should be enough cabinets to do kind of what I want to do for 99% of the sounds I need. Any experience with the Kahayan switcher that Tim Pierce has? That's an amp switcher. That's Mark asking about that. Why did you choose amp Pete? He says it should be better with load and reamp flow since it has an insert loop for that before the cap switch. Just don't even know kind of what does that mean? Like load and reamp flow since it has an insert loop for that. I don't ever reamp. I'm not a reamp guy, like where I record a DI track and then I want to print. Let me get the DI and print another. I print a part, I get a tone, and I just lay it down and kind of do it that way. So reamping and stuff is not something that I'm that concerned with. And Pete is a friend. He's a pal of Dave Friedman's and stuff, and I met him through Dave. And he is a good, guy that I've known for a while, and it just was a natural thing where it was his switcher that I chose for the studio. So, and it works really well, and seems to be great. So I can do 8 amps and up to 8 cabs, and that's all I need. Anything's improvement over what I was doing, which is just physically plugging the cables into the amplifiers and having to manually do it the last time, So it sounds great. It's buffered well, and I really like it. So, and I know Tim likes his switcher too. Okay. Have I ever reflected on the influence ZZ Top had on Van Halen in the 70s? Yes, sir, I have. That's Espen. Some of the funk, it seems, came from there. Absolutely. Like, right? Or, right? So heard it on the X and Hot for Teacher, right? Really, really similar. So I mean, ZZ Top definitely. Billy Gibbons had an influence on Eddie, I'm sure. And there's a lot of similarity in the rhythm guitar playing. It's not just about when you hit the note, but about the duration of the notes and how long you hold it for. I love Billy Gibbons' style, and certainly a lot of that. That's where the boogie came from in Van Halen, I think. That kind of boogie, those grooves. Listen, I heard it on the X and Hot for Teacher, and there's a lot of that song, there's a lot of that kind of. It's all, it's a boogie thing. So I love ZZ Top, man. I really do. Van Halen, I was making the point the other day, there's a similarity between Van Halen and the Beatles, and that's that they were both great cover bands. Both bands spent a lot of time in the bars doing their own interpretations of great songs, learning how to sing, learning how to play, not doing note for note covers, but interpreting them and doing a cool version of those songs while maintaining their own sort of stylistic, character. The Beatles and Van Halen, both of them, right? They did their time in bars and at parties and, playing as cover bands and really learning how to play together and learning a lot of music, different styles of music. And then they put out their music, and it all was, all those influences just boom, and they were both still young bands when they came out with their first albums. And yet they had like good solid, chunk of like, I don't know, each probably had 5 or 6 years of solid gigging under their belts when they came out with their first records, and all those influences were reflected and came out in the wash, and it was a wonderful thing, and with both those groups. So Pedro says if IRs, the aux and Sir Reactive Load are so good, why a mic and cab in recordings? That's Pedro. Well, just because it's fun. There's no other way to put it. Every now and then it's great to just do the old thing, why an Axe Effects and why is there still tube amps? It's like, well, because variety's the spice of life, right? And sometimes the old way is just fun, just to plug in. And I have cabinets. I've had great cabs, and I've got look at all those mics sitting right there. I've got them. So it's like, it's when you have a room which I have. I've invested. It costs a lot of money. I had to spend money on this room and put time into it and stuff, and I want it done the right way. And it's like I have the gear, and I can plug in that stuff and wire it all up. And when it's just as easy when you put in the time and the investment to play that SL68 into the reactive load, the aux, or the cabinet that's out in the other room and mic it up and pull up the faders, that's the coolest shit. You can just use whatever you want. And yeah, that's what I don't know. That's what turns me on. It's like, that's what I'm into. I don't spend my money on a lot of elaborate vacations, or, I live in a fairly simple place. I don't, own old cars. This is where I put my, this is what I do. This is my shit. So I don't have a lake cottage or a boat or anything like that. It's like, I have a room over there that's going to have cabinets in it, and I have an amp switcher and an aux and a reactive load and guitars and pedals and shit like that, so that I can easily plug in and get a bunch of sounds. So that's why, I don't know, because it turns me on. It's like I'm jazzed by guitar tones and gear and playing, and that's it. It's probably more answer than you wanted, right? Sorry, Pedro. Lawrence says, hey, Pete, I'm headed overseas and I need to pick up a simple rig to travel with. All I've ever used are Fender amps and a big pedal board. Any recommendations? Well, so you got a few options. You could either just pare down your pedal board and then rent amps over there, backline amps, because I'm sure there's going to be, some Fender stuff available. That sounds like a pretty simple kind of setup. Beyond that, there's different ways you can go these days. I mean, as far as like a pedal board based rig, you could get a preamp type pedal. I've got some Victory pedals here that in the other room that I have yet to unpack yet, but they're like tube preamps basically. And I guess the thing is, you could put them on they're like big pedals. They're about this big, but you could put them on a pedal board and then run into an effect return of a rental amp, or run into a power amp. There's setups like that. I mean, with something like the PT15, you could get an amp like that and put it in a little road case and fly it with you. It's probably even small enough you might be able to carry it on a plane. Or there's the Kemper route. There's just all the different things that you can explore. If you're mainly a pedal board into clean amp kind of person, I would say the easiest thing for you to probably do is just come up with a streamlined pedal board that you could fly easily or carry on easily. And then maybe look into whether or not you can backline amps over there and get like Fender, Blues DeVilles, or I always like the Basemans, the 59 Basemans. If I can rent those with a few pedals, I can generally get a pretty cool tone. That might be the easiest thing for you on short notice, is to, backline good clean amps and just having a cool little pedal board. It's a little different if you're like a Marshall person. You really rely on your amp for distortion. Now you're backlining something that like you don't know what you're going to get. But if you mainly use clean amps, it's a little easier, to maybe just get your pedal board together and then backline an amp. Moving down, chat's skipping around a little bit, but we got 500 people online on the nose, and it's 1:02 p.m. So I'll go for about another 20 minutes for a full 2 hours. Okay. Oh, somebody's up in the top chat. I'm going to go get to that. That's Tom. And he says, do you find inspirational sounding gear makes you play better? Yeah, for sure. I love my new Thornbucker so much. Awesome, man. That's great. Clean, articulate, but can do dirty and heavy too. I'm glad you love them. That sounds exactly the way I feel about them. Clean, articulate, but can do dirty and heavy. Yeah, inspirational sounding gear. I mean, my favorite scene is the one in Might Get Loud where the Edge is playing with all that stuff on. Then he turns it all off and then goes like, this is what the part would sound like without all the effects. And he's just going ding, 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 ding. Gear can inspire parts and tones and musicality, and certainly, if it can be anything from elaborate effects through to just a nice set of pickups or something. But yeah, that's why we all do it, I guess, eh? And to get turned on by tones and by parts. And let's see what else we got here. Matt Fisher. Oh, he's talking amongst you guys are talking amongst yourselves. Trying to find a question. Big unsung influence on EVH was Snuffy Walden during his time in Stray Dog. That's from Daniel. Is that right? I didn't know that. I know who Snuffy Walden is, but I didn't know he was a big influence on Eddie. Yeah, I mean, Eddie was, soaking it all up back then. Terry Kilgore is another one, right? Another Pasadena area guy that, let's see. That Jimmy Mural is badass, says thrash metal and fun riffs. Thanks. Thank you. Let's see. Moving down. Chris says, hi, Pete. Any experience with Thornbuckers in a PRS Custom 24? Curious to know if they're a good match. I've heard great things from PRS people that have installed the pickups. I don't have I had a Custom 24 at one point. Was that the bolt-on neck one, the Custom 24? I think that's the one you mean. I had a maple neck, maple topped, but alder body guitar with, PRS guitar. This is going back 20 years. That was a nice guitar. And I'm sure they would sound great in there. I've heard nothing but good reports from folks with PRSs that have put them in. Let's see. Ian Cowell says, though I love a loud real amp and massive pedal board, modeling has saved my ass for travel dates. Yeah, me too. I mean, the tours that I did using an Axe Effects with Melissa Etheridge, it was great because I could show up and just plug that thing in, and I had all my presets dialed, and it sounded great. And, I knew what I was getting into as far as I've had a lot of tours where I wish I could have had. I actually, thinking back to when I did in the Philippines in about 2003, I went over there and did some gigs with Mandy Moore, who was a huge star in the Philippines. I always remember that. But I played like 50,000 people, in this football field, with a pod, an original Bean pod. Now, you'd think, oh, wow. But that worked fine, especially in the context of her music. It was pop music. It's like the guitar, pristine, most amazing guitar tone is not the most important thing, but I did have all my sounds and my delays and everything was timed. It sounded like predictable. I got my presets together as best I could at home with that thing, and it worked great because I wasn't getting to the Philippines and getting some rental, like who knows what the hell the amp would be that would show up, and then you're like, oh my god, it doesn't even work. So anyway, and then with Melissa Etheridge, I did whole tours of the Axe Effects where I had to go to Europe for 2 weeks and things and do promo. And I remember doing 5 TV shows in New York City in over a 24-hour period. Like we were running around from TV studio to TV studio. There's no way I could have done it with a full pedal board and amp and going upstairs in these New York studios and stuff. Just had the Axe Effects and took it with a simple pedal board controller and sounded consistent and great. So modeling can save your ass. It can be a great thing for sure. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Manny says, I was wondering, I bought a Yamaha synth MX49, and when I plug into my 8-inch powered speaker, it's not as loud as when I hook it up to my Fender Mustang amp. Am I missing a connection issue? Well, your Fender amp has got a preamp in it. So you're preamping you're adding gain and running into the front end of an amplifier that's gaining things up and stuff. So you're probably going to notice that that's louder rather than a line level in on a speaker. It's also instrument level in on your amp. So yeah, you're you might want a mixer to plug something like the guitar synth right into the speaker. The line in on the speaker is probably at a kind of lower level, and you might want to get something like a little Behringer or Mackie mixer or something that can give you a little bit of gain up to line level to get into that powered monitor. There's a couple of people in the top chat. I am says Princeton 65 reissue 12-inch or 10-inch speaker. It's a 10 in a Princeton, right? So and what model? I don't know what model Fender uses in their reissues. Guitar with Paul G, Erie, Pennsylvania, is up in the top chat. Thank you, sir. He says, if you had to use a guitar modeler preamp processor besides Fractal or Kemper, what would it be? The Helix. What can I use to switch between a few different preamps or processors in a studio? Preamps and processors, you could use something like a loop switcher if it's just preamps. So you can use something along the lines of what RJM makes, or like a Musicom Lab switcher, something like what's on my pedal board. You can get rack mount ones as well from companies like RJM. Just loop switcher, original GCX would work, which you might be able to find cheap online. To switch between a few, maybe all you need is 4 loops or 5 loops or something, and you want to run some preamps or processors into one singular power amp, or maybe just line out into a speaker simulator or something. That would be an easy thing to do with something like a GCX or a one of the RJM switchers. Hopefully that's helpful. Let's see. What do I think of Derek Trucks? I think he's amazing. I think he sounds like a singer on a guitar more than just about anybody. He's just so vocal with the way that he phrases, and he's so also just tuned into when he's improvising and sliding and bending. It's all perfectly intonated, and he's so tuned into great parts. That's the thing. Like great. I don't mean parts like planned out parts. I mean he can improvise. So the melodies he sings in his head are majestic and lovely. It's like he's a great improviser, and he just comes up with great parts on the fly, right? Improviser. He's a great improviser. That's what it is. Dak Tar says, love the show and your work. Thanks for sharing. Thank you. And let's see what else we got here. Oh, somebody else is up in the top chat there. And it is M. Karras. Thank you, sir. He says, love your new Be a Pro series. Not going to be a pro, but want to push myself to step forward in a live jam night. Awesome. Any standing ones in LA you like? Well, there's a few in LA. There's it depends on the style you play and stuff. If there's the Whiskey Jam that happens on Tuesday nights. That's called the Ultimate Jam Night. And it's a little more rock and roll and kind of old school rockers. And then there's the Soundcheck Live, which happens every last Wednesday at Lucky Strike, and it's a mixture of rock and pop and R&B and stuff, mostly kind of maybe a bit more of a rock tinge, but it's a little bit more of an open kind of some different stylistic things going on there than the Ultimate Jam Night, which is a little bit more rock. Monday nights at the Viper Room is Eric Himmel presents the Sunset Jam, Monday nights at Viper Room. And that is rock and pop, and it can be pretty fun. And there's some good people that go down there and play. There's stuff at Sayers Club. There's a is it Backstage Bar and Grill in Culver City? And I've never been to this one, but maybe it's Wednesdays, I think. And that's more like maybe like kind of R&B and rock and soul and stuff. That's supposed to be really good, and I haven't been to that one, so I'm going to get out and go check out that one. So there's some different ones that you can check out in LA, and just go down and make friends and stuff. And once again, it's a little bit of networking, making friends, sit in and check out the people. Say, how could I get in to sit in on one of these nights? And they'll tell you. It won't take long to figure it out. Let's see. Hope I'm not missing out on. Did you ever have the same feeling that the same guitar with the same amp and identical unchanged setting sounds totally different on the next day? That's rock guitar vibes. Yes, and that's obviously just down to the individual, and sometimes you're just off on certain days, or you hear things differently. I'm convinced my ears are different on different days. Like I'm just not hearing things the same. But yeah, totally. And I get really sensitive to neck movement. Like if the truss rod has changed just a little bit, which can happen when it just like rains one day and then it's dry the next day, and it's like, oh, it's a little harder to play today. Like the neck has just changed a little bit, and the action changes. I'm sensitive to all that kind of stuff, and you just got to power through it. And warming up is really important for me. I just find like when I first sit down to play, everything feels like crap, and then after a while I play it, and there it is. Oh, there it is. I can play now, and then it feels good. So what's your daily practice routine, says Beatrice? I really don't have one, Beatrice. I have a pretty schizophrenic, like it depends on the work that I'm doing, but it's like if I'm doing a pedal demo, for example, I'm sitting down to plug in something and I'm going to get a tone out of a pedal and write a song with it, generally speaking. So I go right into writing and thinking like that. Or like if I'm learning songs for either a tour or just a cover gig or whatever it is, I sit down and I focus on that. I'll pull up, transcribe my MP3 phrase trainer thing, and I'll load up the song in there, and then I'll get in that mode and do that, So, but it's really all over the place. I wish I was more focused with like a routine, like, okay, I'm going to work on my arpeggios for 20 minutes, and then I'm going to, but I don't really do it like that. It's more like, what have I got coming up? What have I got to do? What work have I got to get done this week? And then I just go into doing that work, and that somehow sort of generally turns into practice as well, because I'm working on certain things in order to complete the task. Mark said, based on what he's up in the top chat, he said, based on what you said about touring with the Aux effects, when would you choose using an Aux effects or Kemper over one another in live situation? Well, so to me, when I used the Kemper live, I used it with the Helix for effects, because I'm not the Kemper effects for me, I'm not really as into. I'm not saying they're bad or whatever. There might be other people out there that have figured out great ways to use them. It's just not as deep of a device, I don't think, as far as the effects go. So the Aux effects to me is a little bit more, like I say, of an all-in-one thing. The Kemper for me is a little bit more of like, I need the sound of my PT100 on this gig, or I'm really comfortable with the sound of my SL68 for this one part, but I can't bring the amp, so I'm going to bring the Kemper. And I've got a good profile of it in there because it does a good job of profiling the amps. There's no doubt. 522 people online is most people I have right at the end of the thing here. Maybe I should start doing this later. What do you guys think? Should I start at noon instead of 11? But anyway, that's the thing, is that with the different modelers, I feel like the strengths of the Kemper are modeling or profiling your own rigs, your own amps, and it has a power amp built in. So there's that. If I want to plug it into a cabinet, I can do that. Whereas with the Aux effects and the Helix, I think the effects are easier to program, the editor's easier, and they're a little bit deeper in that regard. So there's different strengths there. Let's see. Pete, how do you stop noodling and playing the same old riffs when constructing new solos? That's from Odin Stan. A great one, man, is once again, get some lessons from something like TrueFire, or from, just go pick up a couple right now after you get off of here. Go get a couple TrueFire lessons or a couple of lessons from Jam Track Central. Like I always talk about Mateus's one or Laurie's lessons on there, because they phrase so beautifully, and they do. I've learned licks from them that it's like, oh, I've never done exactly that before. Like this simple, that simple thing, that simple sort of slidey bend that I've been doing a little bit more lately. I don't know if you can hear it or not, but, or, even just that Jeff Becky thing or something. I never really did that lick that much before this year. It's a simple little thing, but just like little things that I hear other players do. And then you can pick up one little trick, by this, I just mean that little slidey bend thing, that little thing. One little thing you can pick up and go, oh, I never would have thought of that before. Or maybe you hear them play a phrase where they start after the one of the beat, like, or you know what I mean? Like they start in a different place that you normally wouldn't. That's another thing is with your solos and stuff. Here's a couple things you can do. Don't start right on the one of the bar. Like let some time go by and then come in. Much like I'm talking, right? Like think about the phrase, like play a phrase, stop, then play a phrase and stop, and don't necessarily start right on the downbeat. So, and then stop, whatever, something like that. Just think about like phrasing like a singer, and that can be helpful. And then I lost my train of thought. I was going to say something else. And also when there's a change coming, it can be helpful to play over the bar line, which I'm still trying to improve at. So like, don't always stop your phrase and then start a new phrase at the next bar. It's like, just play right through it as the change is happening. And if you can do that seamlessly and sound like you meant to do it, there's a couple cool things that like little rut busters or whatever. Okay. What do I think of all the new changes going on over at Gibson? That's from Ron. I think it's great. I think they're doing positive things and we're all sort of rooting for them. I think that new CEO seems like probably a pretty good choice. And let's see. Have you heard Van Halen will tour this year with Michael Anthony? I've only heard the stuff that's been on the internet. That's all I've heard. So yeah. I talk to Ed once in a while. I don't ask him that kind of stuff. I just stay. I stay out of that stuff and just have a kind of general like, "Hey man, hope you're well" sort of discussion. But yeah, I don't. They hold their cards pretty close, obviously. Like when it comes to that stuff, I think, and I think that's probably a good thing. Just from a business perspective, and they don't want people to get let down or disappointed. And also, when Van Halen does things, they like to do it old school way, where it's a big announcement and it's done properly and organized, and there's a big machine behind it. It's like, I think that's what they like coordinating a message, as opposed to these leaks of like little bits of information, which are fun for us in the internet to fodder and all that. And these days, it didn't used to be that way. Like, there wasn't these avenues of. They're a little more old school, like about the way that they, which makes sense because they come from a different era. And it's like, I think they probably just like to, some control over the information and the way that things come out and the way things are released, the way things go down. It's harder and harder these days because of the internet and stuff. But I think that's the, I would love to see them with him personally. I mean, that'd be great if they could go out and do that. And, Sammy's thing, I think, Eddie Trunk, he was on that show, and Sammy was saying, I would love to go out and do it with Dave. And if it was just all of us out there doing it, I think that's a wonderful idea. It's like, I think everybody would love to see that. It would be a great big tour, and, it would be a lot of fun. And I would certainly go and enjoy the hell out of it, and, just celebrate. As I was talking about Peter, for those that joined late, today, Peter Frampton announced he's doing a farewell tour. Wonderful guitar player, and wonderful guy. He's got a degenerative muscle condition that he's dealing with, and he's decided that for now that he's going to call this his farewell tour. And who knows, maybe with promising new treatments and stuff, he could have the miracle tour, he says, and that's him dealing with it in such a positive and awesome way. But the reality is, it's like none of us are getting any younger, and it's like it's I don't know. I just think I'd love to go see Van Halen. Semblance of everybody that's been involved, going out and doing it, and just a celebration of the music, right? I wish, like, when I think about Pink Floyd, I don't know if anybody remembers Live 8 when that happened, and everybody was there. Remember Live 8 back in, I think it was 2003, and you had all those guys up there on stage one more time, and I guess that was the last time, right, when they all did it again, and it was a wonderful thing, it was magical to see them all up there again doing the thing. And just kind of like, I remember Roger Waters at one point just stopping playing the bass and just putting his arms out like this. It was really cool. So it's a great thing. Just it'd be cool if they got together and did it again, with Mike or Sammy or anybody that wanted to be there that was involved. Darren says, I think at some point you build an isolation cabinet in your closet. How does that work out when playing with headphones? And what tips can you suggest for miking techniques? So when it comes to isolation cabinets and closets and things like that, what I did was I built a box in a closet. There's actually a video of it up on YouTube. I ended up not liking it. I lined the inside of the box with a bunch of absorptive kind of stuff, and then I made a lid and put it down on top, and it was a 112 cab sitting in there, and it just ended up kind of having this sort of effect on the sound of the cabinet. It just sounded boxy. And what happened then is I tore the box out, pulled it all apart, and I took the soft stuff from the inside that I was lining the box with, and I just surrounded the cabinet with that stuff, and that sounded great because there wasn't this hard surfaces closing in and a roof on top of the box. And I found that because I was living in a kind of like it was almost like a townhouse sort of place then that had one connecting wall to another place, and I was worried about the sound and the vibration and the noise getting through. The person next door never complained, and I actually ended up going over there and knocking on the door and going, "Can you hear this?" And I had a wireless system. I had my guitar on. They looked at me like I was crazy, but I said, "Do you mind if I'm just making sure this isn't going to bother you?" And because I play guitar and I want to make sure this isn't too loud. And they looked at me like, you could barely hear this little rumble coming through their wall. And they said, can't even really define that. I can't hear what. And I said, okay, I think we're good. And so it was fine. Long story short, the stuff I used was that 703 Owens Corning or whatever the hell it's called. If Lauren's still here, he'll be able to say what it is. But the absorption, panels, that ATS Acoustics is a good resource for this kind of stuff. ATSacoustics.com. And you can buy these panels with either, 2-inch thick or 4-inch thick kind of absorption stuff. Surround a cabinet with that stuff in a closet and just close it up tight. And generally speaking, that works good. Making a box that you close up real tight, something about making it airtight just kind of makes this MIDI crappy sound. Just leaving the thing to breathe a little bit, but making it dead by surrounding with stuff, that was enough for me. So that's what I recommend that you do. Miking techniques, just close mic. I mean, experiment with a 57 on a cabinet, and if this is the speaker, then put the 57 right dead center and then move it out until you find the spot, maybe, an inch back from the cabinet. And that's generally a good place to start. Peter Evans is in the top chat. Did I say top chat? I hope not. Peter Evans is up in the top chat, and he says, oh God, it might be time to go. He says, Super Sunday today. Thanks, Peter. And he's getting his coffee mug. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. I'm going to get one too. I'm going to go get my own coffee mug. I should have it next week, right? Have my own mug instead of whatever this is. It's 1:25, guys, so I'm going to split here pretty quick. Maybe take a couple more. And really appreciate you being here. Thanks to everybody for doing the top chat and stuff. You guys are too kind. I really appreciate it. Camilio says, thanks for the awesome content. Why didn't you add a mid knob to the PT15? Well, there's a mid knob on the distortion channels. On the clean channel, it's really derived from the Bella. The Bella doesn't have a mid knob, and I just found that even on the PT100, I was having the mid always at 5 on the clean channel, and that's the sound I always gravitated towards. So with John, I just said, we can save. Big part of it is saving space on that front panel. And making a front panel that makes sense without too much stuff. So it was like, I think we can lose the mids on the clean channel, just fix it at 5, whatever that value would be, and have bass and treble and a bright switch. And it sounded great, the clean channel he came up with. So there's really no need for it, I don't think. Jax dances reluctantly, says William Shatner. By the way, has anybody heard the William Shatner solo album, which Nigel from Sir turned me on to? The song You're Gonna Die is fantastic. So that's one of my favorite songs of all time at this point. Go check it out if you haven't heard it. What's my opinion on a treble booster into a crunched up Marshall versus overdrive? It's a nasty, gnarly, cool, primitive, awesome sound. That is, I love treble boosters going into a crunched up Marshall. It stays tight is the cool thing, because it's only boosting those top frequencies and stuff. And so you're not pushing a bunch of low end into the amp, and it's a different sound, and it's aggressive and cool. And I love it. It's the sound on my songs like Monster Movie from Guitar Nerd. That's a divided by 13 treble booster, into a dirty, I can't remember actually what amp I used, to tell you the truth, but it's that Marshall-y kind of, it's just got an aggressive kind of snotty sound to it. I mean, early Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, they all did that. There he is. Lauren says Owen Corning 703 fiberglass or Rock Soul. Check out DIY videos for acoustic treatment. There you go. So yeah, the stuff from ATS Acoustics, check that out for the building a ISO thing into a closet situations. All right. Let's see. Have I heard William Shatner's Rudolph song featuring Billy Gibbons? I have not, but maybe that's on the same record. I don't know. Maybe I should listen. What year is my basement head, says Steve? It's a 66, I think. How many full stacks do you own, says Kitchen Marshall? Full stacks like cabs? I don't know. I have I don't own any full stacks in particular, but I have, I've got mostly different various 412s, and then but I think I have a divided by 13 412. I have a Blockhead 412. I got a Randall 412 with V30s. I think that's all my 412s. Oh no, I got a 5150 EVH 412 somewhere in my storage. And then I got a bunch of 212 cabinets. So if I had to, I could have two green. I could use my divided by 13 412 and my blackback 412 together. That would probably sound pretty ferocious for a full stack of greenbacks. Yeah. Bill says, thanks for your great videos. Thank you. Appreciate it. Shatner's You're Gonna Die link. Steve, yeah, we're gonna approve that. There it is. You're Gonna Die. It's down in the chat. Check it out from Steve. He put up the link. It's a great song by William Shatner. Guys, I gotta go. Yang Ad says, see you, man. Fun chat today. You take care, man. Shauna says, thanks so much. You totally rock. You rock too, Shauna. You guys all have a great week. And thanks to all of you for being here. And I'll see you next time, okay? Rock on.